In this video, I want to provide you with a demonstration on how to put your Habitat for Humanity design into the Autodesk Revit site plan file to create your site plan. Before you can begin, it is important that you do the following. Number one, you must sketch out your concept site plan so that you have a pretty good idea exactly where your Habitat for Humanity design will be placed and what direction the front of the house will be facing. Your concept site plan will also allow you to plan where you're going to place your driveway and sidewalk and where you will tie into the existing water meter and sanitary sewer cleanout. Number two, you must download the Affordable Home Site Plan Revit file from Schoology. It will be found in the assignment called Activity 2.3.7 Residential Site Planning. Your site plan will be created in a totally separate file than your Habitat for Humanity design. After you have downloaded this file, make sure you have moved it to the same location as your Habitat for Humanity design so that it will be backed up. Once you have sketched out your concept site plan and downloaded the Affordable Home Site Plan Revit file, you are now ready to begin creating your site plan for your Habitat for Humanity design. To create your site plan in Autodesk Revit, you will have to link your Habitat for Humanity design to your Affordable Home Site Plan Revit file. But before you can do that, please note that you cannot have your Habitat for Humanity design Revit file and your site plan Revit file opened at the same time. Notice that I have my site plan and the floor plan opened at the same time. Before you can link or insert your Habitat for Humanity design into your site plan Revit file, you must first do one particular thing in your Habitat for Humanity design Revit file. In your Habitat for Humanity design Revit file, you will need to go to Site, which is located under the Floor Plan section in your project browser. It is important that you make sure you see only the roof of your Habitat for Humanity design. It is possible that you see more than just your roof. If you do, we will need to hide those items after it has been linked or inserted into your site plan Revit file. Your file must be saved with this view visible. Once everything looks good, save your file. Then close your Habitat for Humanity design Revit file and make sure it has been completely closed. Now, in your Affordable Home Site Plan Revit file, go to Insert at the top of your screen and then choose Link Revit. Next, browse to the location where your Habitat for Humanity design Revit file is located, choose your file, and then hit Open. Once you do that, you may not see your Habitat for Humanity design on your site. That is because if you look at the contours on the site, your site has an elevation of 769 feet to 770 feet. When your Habitat for Humanity design was linked or inserted, it came in at elevation 0. Go to the 3D view of your site. When you do, you will see the site and the Habitat for Humanity design. Click on the front face of the view cube. Now, click on your structure and drag it up so that it is just above the site that you see on your screen. And then go back to the site level that is located under floor plans in your project browser and double click on Site. Now you should see your structure on your site. Move your structure to this general location within the minimum building lines or setback and these other setback lines that are located on this site. Now that we have the structure or the design in place on the site, you can see that there are a couple items on here that should not be seen. We should not see these items because they will appear when we print out the site plan. First of all, we see this is a telephone symbol that I've used on my electrical plan, and there also is a little door, which is actually a panel door in the foundation wall that allows a person to access the crawl space of this house. So I need to turn those items off, and there's a really easy way to do it. You just simply right click on the structure, you choose override graphics in view, and then choose by category. Next, choose the open visibility graphics dialog option right here. And then there are several tabs. You need to choose the very first tab, which is model categories. And if you'll scroll down, you find the items that are on, and you just simply turn them off. In this case, I know that I have specialty equipment is where my door, the panel door in the foundation wall, that is what that is. That's the category that door is under, so I need to uncheck that. And also, I need to scroll down and find telephone devices, and I'm just going to uncheck that. And then I'm going to click apply, and then I'm going to click OK. So whatever you may see, you need to turn those items off just as I showed you. But now we're ready to just continue moving this structure into the exact location that it needs to be in. Now we need to determine whether or not we need to rotate our house in any way. The Maple Street is the main street of this property. 10th Street is more like a side street. We want our house to be facing Maple Street. So you need to kind of know your structure and know where your front door of your house is. Obviously, the front door needs to face Maple Street. I know that my front door is located in this general area, so my whole structure needs to be rotated 180 degrees. So to do that, you just simply click on the structure and you click on the rotate option, and then it'll find the center of the entire structure, and all you simply need to do is just click as I'm fixing to do at the 0 degree angle, and then I'm just going to drag this line over and then make sure it says 180, and I will click again, and I have just rotated the entire structure 180 degrees. Next, we need to place this house right on this minimum building line. All structures need to be built just at or just past the minimum building line. This ensures that all structures will sort of have or at least be aligned on the properties, and that all adjacent properties will have structures that are aligned to your structure and vice versa. I hope that makes sense. So what I want to do is click on my structure, and I'm going to go to move, and I'm going to see if it allow me to pick on the midpoint. And so we're just going to move it to this general area. Actually, what I want to do is I want to place a line, because I want to find the midpoint. So my house needs to be centered from left to right of these two setback lines. So I'm going to go to annotate, and I'm going to go to detail line. And it really doesn't matter what line you use here. This is just a line that I'm going to delete later, but I do want to use a line that I can see. So I'm going to choose the lines line, and then what I'm going to do is draw a line from this intersection of the setbacks to this intersection of the setbacks. What this will do will give me a nice midpoint to use. So again, I'm going to click on my structure, I'm going to go to move, and I'm going to find the midpoint. Remember, this is my drip line, or my overhang of my house, and that cannot go over the minimum building line. So we're just going to let the roof line, or the overhang, be the edge that is on the right on the minimum building line. So I've used the midpoint of this side of the house, of the roof, and I'm going to come up and I'm going to find the midpoint of that green line that I've drawn, and that is approximately where I want the house to be. So now I'm going to delete the line because I no longer need it. Now, before we go any further, we need to do one particular thing. So we're going to go back to the 3D view. I want to show you what this is what's happened here. Remember, we just moved the structure up above the property, and this is actually the front of the house. So if you zoom in and look at your structure, and everybody's is going to be slightly different, you'll notice that my house is actually raised up above the property itself. Now keep in mind, there may be some stairs associated with this property, and so what I'm getting ready to show you may not apply specifically to the structure that I have here, simply because I have vents, which means this is a foundation, this is a crawl space, and so this house may be at an elevation that is perfect for this structure and that allows for enough crawl space of the house. But maybe you've drawn a house that is on a concrete slab, and so we want to ensure that the elevation of this house is where it should be. So I'm going to go to the back view, which is actually the front of the house, and I'm going to tilt this thing just a little bit just to show you. So this is our site, and this right here, let's just assume we have a concrete slab, and that about this area right here needs to be where the house is on this property. So what I want to do is I'm going to go back straight to the back view, so that I'm looking perpendicular at my house, and I'm just going to click on the house itself, if it'll let me, and then I'm going to use move, and I'm just going to take, say, this point right here, and then I'm just going to come down, straight down, until it hits this property. And so I moved it straight down so that it is generally in the right elevation that I need it to be at. So I'm going to go back to this home view here. I'm going to go back to my site level, and I'm going to look at it again. I'm going to ensure that the house itself has not moved away from the minimum building line and is approximately in the center between these two setback lines. It looks like it is, but if for some reason you move your structure and it has moved away from the minimum building line, you're going to want to move it back to the location that you need it to be in. Now I want to show you how to create your sidewalk and your driveway. So we're going to do that by going to Massing and Site, and we're going to use what is called subregions. It's probably a good idea at this point, after you've done a good bit of stuff, to go ahead and just save your project. So I'm going to save my project, and it may ask you as you go to select subregion or some other option throughout this demonstration, it may ask you to save your project. So you want to save your project consistently so that you don't lose anything in case your file crashes. But we're going to create the sidewalk and the driveway by using what is called subregion. So I'm going to choose subregion, and keep in mind these subregions are not actually things that we're going to place. It's not actually concrete. We're just really creating a surface. And so we're gonna we could spend a lot of time adding the physical components. We could physically add concrete and other items to this, but we just don't want to do that for time constraints. So we're going to do this the easy way. So we're going to change our material right here to concrete. So I'm going to click in the little box right here, this little box that will appear inside this box next to by category, and it will come up and allow me to search for my material, which is concrete. And I'm just going to use this one, concrete cast in place, and I'm going to choose OK. And now as I draw a subregion, I am drawing a region that will be seen or recognized in Rivet as concrete. So what I want to do is create a sidewalk from my front door straight to the sidewalk that exists along Maple Street. So right now you cannot see the front door of the house. So I know generally where it's at, and I could be wrong exactly where I'm getting ready to put my sidewalk. So to ensure that I find the right location, I'm going to actually cancel out of my subregion, and then I'm going to say yes, because I did not want to actually draw the subregion at that point. I want to make my roof transparent so I can see inside the structure. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to override graphics and view, and I'm going to choose by category, Next, I will go to Open Visibility Graphics dialog, and I'm going to go to Model Categories, and I'm going to scroll down to Roof. And in the roof line, or roofs line, there is a transparency category or column, and I'm going to click inside that box, and I'm going to choose Override, and I'm going to change my transparency to about 60. And I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click Apply, and then I'm going to click OK. Now I can see inside the structure. I know that my door is in this general location right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start a sidewalk. I'm going to start the sidewalk here and go all the way perpendicular to the sidewalk that already exists on the site. So I'm going to go back to Subregion, and I'm going to go to Line, and I'm going to choose this corner of the structure, which is a little corner wall, and I'm just going to go perpendicular to the sidewalk, and then I'm going to go over about 5 foot, which matches the width of the sidewalk by the road, and then I will just go all the way back down to the house itself and let it grab that point. And then the thing about subregions is it has to be closed. So whatever you draw, it has to be a closed figure for it to accept this as a subregion. So now you can see I have a sidewalk here that I've sketched. It is a closed figure. You want to make sure that you sketch your subregion in a continuous fashion, meaning that you don't have the possibility where you've created any kind of gaps anywhere. So once you have created your subregion, you want to hit the green check mark to finish this subregion. Now you'll see that I have a sidewalk here. If there was a problem with my subregion, for example, if there was a gap at any one of these corners, it would have told me that it could not create that subregion. So I'm going to click on the subregion really quick. I'm going to go back to the boundary. I'm going to edit the boundary of it. Let's just say that happens, and so you're stuck in this mode and you can't get out. You could use this command right here, the trim extend to corner, and you could choose every corner of your subregion, and just it'll trim those corners so that it will ensure that you have no gaps in your subregion. And then hit your green check mark to accept that, and then it should work. Now we're going to add our sidewalk, and the sidewalk takes a little bit, a couple extra steps to complete. And first of all, we're going to use subregion again, but this is going to require 2 separate subregions to create the driveway. One issue with subregions is you cannot cross or overlap subregions. So this is already, as you see highlighted here, an existing subregion that exists on this site. I cannot cross a new subregion over this existing subregion. So as I draw, I'm going to draw my driveway. I'm going to start this end first and just draw some sort of shape that will allow cars to pull straight in and just kind of maybe 2 cars to park. But I do want to avoid this clean out. So I'm going to make sure that I start my driveway just to the right of this clean out. So I'm going to go to subregion, and if it doesn't recognize the last material that you used, you'll have to choose your material again. So I'm going to choose the material, and I'm going to choose concrete, and I'm going to choose the concrete cast in place. I'm going to click OK, and now I'm ready to start sketching my driveway. So I'm just going to start in this general area. That's a good point right there. So I'm just going to start here. I'm going to come down about to this general area. This is where you're going to want to plan out exactly the size of your driveway. But I'm going to come up at an angle like this, and then I'm going to come down, and then I'm just going to close off this. I want the total length to be about 16 foot. That's a good distance for about 2 cars to park side by side in a driveway. And I'm going to go back to the perpendicular point here at this sidewalk, and then I'm going to close this subregion. So just to kind of check how this looks, I'm going to click on this line, and it tells me that the width of this driveway is about 9 foot. So I'm going to round that off, and I'm going to say, actually I'm going to choose this line. And once I do, it's going to tell me down here the 9 foot. I'm going to change this to about 10 foot. and then it'll move the driveway over. I also want about a car length here, so I don't want a car to have to park in a diagonal fashion. So I'm going to choose this point, this line here, and I'm just going to drag this point right here to this point right here so I can see what this dimension is. And it tells me that it is 8 foot 2 inches. So what I'm going to do is click on that, and I'm going to change that to about, let's change that to about 16 foot. I'm really going to exaggerate this here. And so a car can fully park here and here in this location. So now once you have the main part of your driveway completed and it is closed, you can hit the green check mark, and now we have a driveway. So before I do the apron part of the driveway, I want to add a sidewalk that connects this sidewalk to the driveway. So I'm going to go back to Subregion, and it has remembered my last material, so that's a good thing. So I'm just going to come here, I'm going to click on line, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle that is about 5 foot wide, just the same width as my other sidewalks. Actually, let's see if I can get it close here. I'll just make it that close, and then I want to snap to there and pull it down. And what I want to do is click on this line, and I want to change this to exactly 5 foot. And so now this is exactly 5 foot. I also want to make sure that from here to the house itself is a decent distance where somebody can maybe plant flowers here or plant some landscaping here, some bushes. So I'm going to change this to about maybe, we'll leave it 3 foot. We'll round it off 3 foot. And so I need to change my width here to be 5 foot. And so it's shortened that. Now once you have that connecting sidewalk from the driveway to the sidewalk here, I'm going to hit the green check mark, and then I have a general layout here of the main site. Now it's time to connect up the driveway to the apron. This is going to take a couple extra steps. I'm going to slide this text up just a little bit so we can see more of the line here. So what I want to do is I'm first going to just draw a rectangle box that will be the apron, and then I will explain a couple items about that. So we're going to go to Subregion. I'm going to go to rectangle, and I'm just going to come here and just find this point here. I'm going to guide up to this side of the sidewalk, and once it finds that point, I'm going to click here and just find this point and then come all the way up just like that. And then now I have an apron that is 10 foot wide, just as this part of the sidewalk is also 10 foot. Now at driveways or aprons that connect to a road, there is usually a radius here or a diagonal that allows a person to make the turn into and out of this driveway. I like the radius. I think the radius looks better. But the reason why you want to do that is not just to make the turning into and the turning out of the driveway easy, but you want to make sure that over time that someone doesn't drive over this corner of the driveway and the edge of the road. Keep in mind that most roads, especially in this kind of location, this road probably has a curb and gutter or a concrete curb and gutter. So if you are constantly making a sharp turn here and you run over this corner of the driveway, you may over time destroy the integrity of the concrete, so it may begin to crack and look really bad. So creating that radius prevents that from happening. It can still happen, but it makes it less of a possibility. So I want to show you how to do that, but you can easily create a little diagonal line here and then just come over and do something very similar of what I'm getting ready to do. So what I want to do is, while I'm still in this subregion, I'm going to go to circle, and I'm going to just draw a 5 foot radius circle with the center starting at this point. And then what I'm going to do is start another circle, and just follow along with me here. You're probably going to be scratching your heads wondering why I'm doing this, but there is a reason why I'm doing this. But again, this 5 foot radius circle, or this 10 foot diameter circle, its center is at this corner of the apron. I'm going to go back to circle. I'm going to draw another 5-foot radius circle at the intersection of the edge of road and the circle that I just drawn. And I'm going to type another 5-foot radius. Then I'm going to do the same thing at this intersection of the circle and the driveway. And then I'm going to type 5 foot. And so now I can delete the first circle that I drew. And now I'm left with just these 2 circles. What this does, this gives us an intersection right here that if I draw a 4th circle at this intersection and I type in 5 foot, that means that this circle is now tangent with this edge of the road and tangent with my driveway. So once I do that, I can delete the circles, and then what I can do is just click on this line here, and I'm just going to drag its midpoint to this point right here. And then what I'm going to do is go to trim, and with trim you are not just choosing where you want to cut the edge, but you want to choose what you want to keep. So this is the edge that I want to trim to. So this intersection is where I want to trim this line to, but I want to choose the part of the line that I want to keep. So I'm going to keep this part of the line. So now I've trimmed back. So now what I want to do is I want this to be my edges that I want to trim to. Actually, let me undo that. So I'm going to break this circle, make this a little bit easier on myself, and I'm going to trim, with this being where I want to trim to, this part of the circle. Let me put another break in this. So now I can delete this part of the circle, so it won't, when I trim, it doesn't go too far. So I'm going to go back to trim. I'm going to choose the edge that I want to trim to, and then I want to choose the part of the arc that I want to keep, which is this part right here. Then I'm going to do that again, choose the arc, or actually this is the edge that I want to trim to, and then I'm going to choose this part of the arc because I want to keep that. And now I have a nice radius here. So you can repeat the same steps on the left side, or you can take a shortcut, which I'm getting ready to do myself. So I'm going to choose this arc. I'm going to choose the mirror draw axis option, and I'm going to choose this midpoint of this part of the driveway, and I'm just going to go straight up until it is perpendicular or hits this edge of the road, and it draws my radius right over here. And I'm going to pick this line, drag it to the end point of that radius. Next, I will trim this part of the line, so I need to go to trim. This is the edge that I want to trim this line back to, and then I want to choose the part of the line that I want to keep, which is this part, and then it trims that portion away. So once you do that, you could hit the green check mark and see if everything's good, but just to ensure that you have nice clean edges or closed edges or endpoints, you can go to this option here, which is the trim extend to corner, and you could choose this arc and your lines and ensure that there's no gaps between them. So once you do that and you go all the way around and make sure that is done, you can hit the green check mark. And now we have a driveway that has an apron and that makes it easier for a car to turn in and turn out. Now I want to show you how to create a 3D rendering of your site so that this rendering will show not just the site itself, but it'll also show your structure on the site. The way that we do that is we go to View, and then under the 3D View option, if you'll hit this drop down option, you'll see the camera. And so before I do this, I want to draw your attention to an important thing. First of all, notice again the contour. The highest contour on this site is 770 feet. So keep that in your mind before I do this part of the 3D rendering. So I'm going to place my camera at this corner of the site, and I'm just going to draw my view in this way, and then I'm just going to let go, and then I'm going to click approximately right there. So when it comes up, this is the actual view of the camera. This is the picture that I'm seeing right now. So there's nothing shown here in this snapshot. The reason being is that this camera view comes in at an elevation of 0. So remember, 770 was the elevation of that contour. So if you scroll down, you'll see two things. The eye elevation, which is at 5 foot 6 inches, and the target elevation is at 5 foot 6 inches. So what I'm going to do is make this read 775 foot 6 inches. So just type in 77 so that it reads 775 feet 6 inches, and do the same thing down here. And once you hit apply, you will now see the structure will appear, and then you are able to play with this crop region, and then you can kind of add a little bit more of the site. You can take some of it away, whatever you would like to do to this. You can actually even play with the view cube here and tilt the view a little bit, so if you wanted to change the angle a little bit. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep it just like this and do something along those lines. So this is what I want to render here. So to render this view, you're going to go to render, and you have several options for the quality of this render. You have draft, you have medium, high, and best. Best is obviously going to take the longest, so I'm not going to choose that for this demonstration. I'll choose maybe the medium, but just understand the lower quality that you choose, the more grainier that your final render will appear to be. And keep in mind, this render, this image that we're getting ready to capture, is an image that we need to save. So we need to save it so that it is part of this file, but we also want to export this image so that it can be used in your document, your report for this project, and also your cover page for your main floor plan drawing. So I'm just going to choose medium, and when you do that, you just simply hit render, and it will go through the stages, the steps of rendering this site. So I'm going to hit pause here and let this render happen, and I will resume when it has finished rendering this image. My render is now complete. It took almost about 1.5 minutes to render this at the medium quality. So just understand the higher quality you set this at, the longer it will take to make this render. Now once you look at it, you may decide you don't like it. You can always change the angle, you can close out of this, but just keep in mind that anytime you close out of this box right here, you will lose this render. So that is why you want to do two things. Number one, you want to save it to your project. So I'm going to click Save the Project, and I'm just going to call this 3D Site Rendering. And I'm going to click OK. Next, you want to export this image, so it will capture this image and save it as a JPEG by choosing Export. And it will ask where I want to save this image, so I'm going to give it a name first. I'm going to call it 3D Site Rendering. And then I will just click Save. I'm saving this in the downloads, but you'll want to save this render wherever your other files for this project are located. So just click Save. And now it is saved into the project. It has also been saved as a JPEG where all my other files have been saved. And now I can close out of this rendering. So now notice again, you'll lose this. But let's say you didn't like that render and you want to change the angle. You can do that by changing the view cube. You can tilt this angle a little bit. Maybe there's something, maybe when you look at the rendering, you notice, for example, if I go back to it here, I can go to renderings, and there's my 3D site rendering. And so I can double click on it and look at it. Maybe you'll say, oh, you know what, there's a little gap there. I'm not really a big fan of that. Maybe you want to go back and change your driveway and make some adjustments to your site. You can do that and then re-render this when you're done with that. But now that we've created this rendering, now it's just ready. We're ready to just review the sheet and just make a PDF of your site. But before I do that, I'm going to go back to Site Plan, back to the site. And the last thing I want to do is turn off the items that you see right here, and not really turn them off, but I need to fix the visibility here. This will not print as you see. It will print just the roof, but just for sanity's sake, I want to make sure that it doesn't. So I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to go Override Graphics and View by Category, and I'm going to choose Open the Visibility Graphics Dialog. and then I'm going to choose this first tab, Model Categories, scroll down to my roof, and then where it says 60% transparency next to roofs, I'm going to click in there, and I'm going to go back to 0 transparency. I will click apply and then click OK. And now all it sees is the roof and the ridge of that roof. Now we're ready to just review the sheet. So in your project browser, if you'll scroll down, there's already been a sheet created for you. You really don't have to do anything other than just make sure it looks okay. So if you'll double click on C1 Site Plan, C stands for Civil, which is typically where site plans are generated. Typically the site plan is generated and created by a civil engineer, not necessarily the architect. Architects do sometimes do site plans, but to really get very detailed, complex site plans, a civil engineer might do it. So that's why they use the C1 numbering for this sheet. So if you look at the sheet itself, here it is. It's got site plan. Everything looks okay. And then looking at the site itself, everything looks good there. I see the house. I see the sidewalks. I see the driveway, and so now we're just ready to create the PDF for this sheet. To create your PDF for this sheet, simply go to Print here, or you can go to File, Print. Either one's fine, it's the same thing. You want to change your printer to one that is called Microsoft Print to PDF, and we want to first select our view. So I'm going to hit Selected Views, Sheets, and I'm going to choose Select. This is good practice. We only have one sheet, so it should only choose this one sheet, but it's good practice, especially if you have multiple sheets like your floor plan, to choose that option so that you can choose all the sheets that you want to create a PDF of, and then click OK. And notice that when you do that, because we've chosen this selected view sheet option and then we selected the one sheet, it's going to give us the option to create separate files, or we want to create a combined PDF of all of our sheets in one PDF. So that's the option that I always like to choose. So this, again, is good practice to make sure that you always choose combine multiple selected views or sheets into a single PDF file. Once you do that, click OK, and it will ask you, you'll notice here that the location for this PDF is set to My Downloads. You'd want to browse and change that location to the same location where your other files for this project have been saved. Hopefully that's on your OneDrive. You would click Save, and then you would click OK, and then you'll be done and can submit your PDF.